Hey, Brian here on the farm. Another beautiful day, blessed by God with this weather in February, can't believe it. One of the most common questions I get asked is what type of fencing should I use for our goats? So I thought I'd take a couple minutes right before lunch here and shoot a quick video, explain to you the different types of fence we have here, the pros and cons of each, and hopefully help you make your decision. Here we go. First type of fence that we'll highlight here is actually these panels with, I believe, about a 2x4 inch square on them. What you'll notice about this, the benefits of this is that it, it's obviously not electric, so you don't have to worry about kids touching it when you're really close to the house like this line is here. This is our kidding pen, so it also has the added advantage of the baby goats not being exposed to electric, on day one when they're out here. Some of the disadvantages, you've got your wood posts that you've got to typically put in pretty close together, which gets expensive. The panels themselves are expensive, and you'll notice how this one is bowed out right down here. The goats think it is a wonderful idea to go ahead and rub their fur and their sides on these things, so you're going to do maintenance keeping these together. Like I said, the pros are that you don't have to worry about anybody getting shocked. Cons, definitely expense and time of installation. So let's move on to the next type of fence. So in this corner of this paddock, I want to highlight two types of fence actually. You've got this 2x4 inch, what they call no-step equine fence. And then we actually have an electric line running across the top, and then there's two strands of barbed wire. I personally don't care for the barbed wire at all, but this is what was existing. Pros of this, again, you don't have to worry about animals getting electrocuted, or not electrocuted, but shocked. One of the cons, you can see right there, they love to rub on these fences that aren't going to shock them. You can do like we did on the other side here. I think you can see it. We've got a standoff wire in there because we had, during breeding season, a buck in here and then a buck in here with two different groups of does. So you get a little bit of competition going, and you can run into situations like this corner of the fence right here, where they can actually, we had a buck, he's no longer with us, but he's responsible for all this patchwork because he actually busted through that fence. A buck that wants through there is not going to have much of a hard time getting through it. So in my book, this stuff's a little overpriced, not particularly what I care for, but it does the job. You're going to have maintenance, and you can see that one of the key things with fence like this is weed eating. You can really go through a lot of string or on those plastic blades, either one, trying to keep these fence lines maintained. So if you are going to use this, I would recommend you raise it up about 4 inches off the ground so you can easily trim underneath it. All right, let's move on to the next type of fence. Okay, here we have our temporary electric netting fence from Premier One. You can see we've got a goat grazing right up next to it. They typically know that they don't want to touch this. It is electrified, and when we tested it this morning, I think it was at about 4,400 volts. So, it gives a good pop as long as they're grounded. And all the electric runs in the horizontals. The bottom horizontal obviously doesn't have anything, but the other, I believe, 6 strands that go horizontally across here are hot. Just a personal word of advice, don't ever try to tie 2 sections of this together when it's live and think that you could play the game of operation and not get popped, because you will. Pros on this fence, you can easily divide paddocks like this. You take a pasture like this. You can see the other video I did on setting up this temporary electric fence. It makes it really easy to divide this and get more out of your pastures. The only real con on this fence, takes a little time to install. I wouldn't count that as a big con. The price is up there a little bit, but I would say that's balanced out by flexibility. The biggest con that I can come up with for this fence is if you don't test it each and every day, like I mentioned in that other video, the goats will get way too comfortable with it, and they will try to challenge the fence. And we actually had one of our best doelings get tangled up in it and strangled because a guard donkey had broken an insulator. Like I said, you can see all that in that other video. The biggest pro to this fence is the versatility. Absolutely love what it allows you to do. You can not only break down existing pastures that are fenced in, you can go onto mobile sites, you know, where you don't have existing fence and set one up really quickly. As long as you've got electric and water, you're good to go. So let's move on to another section, another type of fence, and highlight that. Okay, this next type of fence is what there was a lot existing already on the farm, so you know, you work with what you've got, and that's this woven wire fence with barbed wire up here. You can get this woven wire in 2 heights. A lot of people like this, you know, people that traditionally are used to using the metal T-post and going every 10 foot. I absolutely despise this fence, and a couple of reasons for that. You can see it does rust and wear down over here. We've got it kind of patched together. You know, it finally does get to that point after enough years. That's not my biggest complaint with it. My biggest complaint is that these big squares are enough that goats will get their heads in there and get them stuck. And you're gonna have to, 9 times out of 10, you've got to cut, you know, wire to get them out, because goats only have that forward gear. They don't know about reverse, and trying to get their horns back through there defies physics most times. So, you know, what a lot of people, you see them doing is actually debutting goats so they don't get stuck in the fence, when I don't think the goat is the problem. You've got to work with the nature of the goat. You're not going to change that. How about we put up the right kind of fence so that they're not getting stuck in it? And in my book, you know, it's fine if this is what you've got to work with already. That's, you know, that's just the way it is. But if you're putting something up new, I would definitely not recommend this. I think the expense by the time you do insulators and T-post every 10 foot, you know, it doesn't even win out on cost. So there's really just no good reason for putting this fence up in my book. One of the major downsides, you will see how you actually get multi-floor rows can grow right up through this. The cedars are notorious for growing up in here. Any fence has got to be maintained, but this stuff makes it more difficult. So that's the woven wire fence. Now we're going to save the best for last and move on to my favorite. All right, here we are with the last type of fence that I'm going to highlight today, and that's the timeless fence. There are a bunch of different ways that you can use this. I like to use it with high tensile electric wire. I'm a guy that, while I respect tradition and, you know, the wisdom of how we've done things in the past, you're always looking for a new way to do things that's going to be more productive, going to be more efficient, just all around a better product. And I think we found that here with Timeless. You can see this is one of their corner braces right here. And while we would do this a little bit differently, this was the first section we ever put up with this product. You've got your wires all the way to the end here, and then we've got it wired in. You know, I would probably use the fence strainers on it if we did it again. One word of advice when you're doing this, and we didn't know this the first time, is you can see the contour of the ground. You know, this is Missouri, nothing's flat. Do your bottom strand first. So I think we did 6 strands on this section here. Do your bottom first and work your way up. It's a lot easier, because what ended up happening is we went through on the bottom 2 lines, went through the same hole a couple of times, and it just works out a lot easier. One thing I can say about this fence, deer have slammed into this, nobody's broken it. We've put a buck on each side of it with girls. Nobody challenges it, nobody wants anything to do with it, because the fence is very hot here. It's 4,400 volts in the temporary, and I think it's probably running about 7,000 volts right now, right here in the main. It's stood up for a couple of years now. It's very rigid. About the only thing that you're going to have to do that I have not figured out is you still are going to have a traditional post for your gates. That'll be the next thing we try to figure out. But just an excellent fence, and I can say that this fence is held in, like I said, it's held in the bucks, held in the does. It's stood up to the hundreds of deer that cross through here. It is stood up to horses. I have no doubt that it'll work for cattle. One of the greatest things, the reason that it has stood up so well, it's even stood up to me trying to trim around it with the tractor and everything. With it being flexible like this, you know, when a deer runs into it, or even down here in the corner where the trees are, a branch falls on it, it doesn't snap the system because you've got it so rigid. It's got some flexibility into it. So I would highly recommend this to everybody. We did space the T-post a little closer on this because we didn't know what to expect. The more contour you have, the more posts you're going to have, but from everything I've seen, you can probably get away with about 40-foot spacing on good flat ground. And then they've got temporary spacers you can set in between, make it easier to trim. There's actually, I guess you could do this on any high tensile fence, but there's a implement you can get for your tractor too that makes it easy to trim under here. It's kind of expensive though, so you'll still see me out here trimming it by hand. I hope this video has been helpful for you. This is by far my favorite fence, and there'll be links in the description to both that Premier One temporary netting you see over here hooked up to the timeless fence, and a link for that too. God bless you and have a great day.